right, sweet. Flatline MMA podcast episode number 65. The boys are back. We're ready to talk fights. UFC Vegas 18 Saturday night. Great card overall. That was a good card. A lot of just crazy finishes. I think unexpected wins. I think this card had it all for being just a fight night. Great Saturday night overall, headlined by Alistair Overeem and Alexander Volkov. Let's just start with the main card here. Get into a couple fights. Flatline's own Diego Ferreira taking on Beneil Dariush, the rematch. I believe it was, 6 years in the making, 7 years in the making. Beneil got the better of Diego in the first matchup. We knew this one was going to be fireworks. I called it when he was on the show. I said he was going to get fight of the night. They did. Unfortunately, didn't go Diego's way. 3-round war, though. Beneil Dariush split decision win over our boy Diego. Can't complain, though. Overall, great fight. I thought 3 rounds of just action-packed, just everything. Striking, on the ground. I think everywhere just looked so good. How did you score the fight? Did you agree with the decision?
Yeah, watching the fight, it seemed a lot closer to me than kind of what the stats showed. But they both landed some really good shots. Both kind of wobbled each other at some points. Dariush got a lot of takedowns, which I think was a kind of a game changer for him for the fight. Yeah, and the jiu-jitsu too. Like Ferreira had him in some compromised positions. Dariush put him in some danger on the ground too. So watching the fight, it was pretty it was really entertaining, looked pretty even. But Dariush just, I think he had like 5 takedowns, and he had he landed more and he was more accurate. So even though Diego might have been more active, Dariush landed more, caught the takedowns, and had more time on top too when it came to the grappling side of things. So just looking at the stats, it makes sense that Dariush won, but watching the fight is really exciting. And yeah, I mean, it looked close all the way through.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Obviously, shout out to both of them. 50K each, which is obviously huge. I know Diego, we talked about that when he came on the show, so that's awesome that came to fruition. I agree. I think the takedowns were a big part of it. I thought, I thought Diego obviously dominated round 1. Just landing that just massive up kick at the end of the round, just put an exclamation mark on there. And then, round 2, I thought Dariush did a pretty good job of just getting a few takedowns. And then obviously round 3 was razor close. But again, I think the last few takedowns at the end of the round really kind of signified the win for Dariush. I mean, both these guys were on big win streaks. 6-win streak for Ferreira, 5 for Dariush. Dariush is now on a 6-fight win streak. This is a man that hasn't got the respect of this division yet, right? He just beat a top 10 guy. Dariush, I'm assuming, is going to take his spot come tomorrow morning. I think it's time for him to get a big fight, man. You know what I mean? Yeah. 5-fight, 6-fight win streak in the lightweight division is nothing to just bat an eye at, man. This guy he said it at his post-fight interview. He was like, Diego should have never have fought me. He should have had a top 5 opponent. Like, when you go on a streak like this, you deserve better than that. So, I'm taking a look at this top 10. It's just a bunch of killers, man. I mean, you look at someone like Dariush, his only setback has just been that kind of fluke knockout against Alexander Hernandez in the first friggin' 15 seconds. When Hernandez just like fake glove touch, remember that? And he just ran at him and he knocked him out. I mean, that was a setback. Then we had obviously the big Barbosa flying knee. But again, 6-fight win streak for Dariush. So I think we're going to put some respect on his name. Shout out to those two. That's how you start off, a fight night. That was obviously super exciting. Fight of the night, 50K each to them. Shout out Diego Ferreira. You can come back on the show anytime. You're our boy. Next, obviously, Michael Johnson, Clay Guida. I mean, Clay Guida getting it done. The guy's friggin' 70 years old, beating Michael Johnson, who has probably the weirdest UFC career out of anyone on the roster. Guida looked good, man. It was a hard, just fought, right? Decision, but he looked good. He looks
Yeah.
good. Michael Johnson, he looked flat-footed. He really just didn't, I just didn't. It wasn't the same old Michael Johnson that we're seeing knock everyone out, beating the guys like Dustin Poirier, Tony Ferguson, Edson Barbosa, right? He's had such a roller coaster of a UFC career, but shout out Clay Guida. Great win. Co-main event time. This one hurt, man. This one hurt. Corey Sandhagen taking on the legend Frankie Edgar. Bantamweight scrap, right? You got Corey Sandhagen, who's been on, he's been on a tear, right? He's coming back from that Aljamain Sterling, just rear naked choke, real quick, first round submission, right? He had the hype behind him. He was on like a 7 or 8 fight win streak. The dude's one of the best like up and coming prospects. Aljamain stops him in the first round via submission very easily. We were all like, all right, what the hell? Then he comes back and he just TKOs Marlon Moraes. And then he runs into Frankie Edgar, who, again, Edgar coming off of a just great performance against Pedro Munoz, dropping down to bantamweight. My God, he gets starched in 28 seconds. Corey Sandhagen, flying knee. Frankie out cold. One of the most vicious. You look at Masvidal Askren. I mean, people are going to be talking about Sandhagen Edgar for a while. That was vicious. I've never seen Frankie Edgar just go out like that. Even when Ortega knocked him out, it was still, he was there, right? He got right back up. Like Frankie Edgar was down, man. Like I didn't. I was scared for him. But I mean, what do you think of Sandhagen's performance? Because that was just, that cemented a title shot for him right there. I mean, what'd you think? Because Sandhagen's for real, man.
Yeah, I wish we got to see a little bit more, see him deal with the wrestling of Frankie Edgar. But yeah, I mean, I guess there's really not that much to say. I mean, I'm looking at the stats. There were a total of 8 strikes thrown the entire fight, 4 of which landed, and 1 of them being that knee. So we didn't get to see a whole lot. But I don't know. Flying knees are like so crazy to me because like how do you even like see an opening for that? I feel like you just throw it and hope, but who knows? I mean, he landed it perfect. I mean, he must have saw something like I don't know, but yeah, it was crazy. I mean, that's going to be in the running for one of the top knockouts of the year.
Going to be tough to beat. I mean, and to do it a guy like Frankie Edgar is no slouch. He might be on the tail end of his career trying to make one more run in a different weight class, but
yeah,
I mean, Frankie Edgar, he's been knocked out. Think about it. I mean, obviously he's been kind of on a decline lately, but I mean, Ortega was the first one to knock him out, and then Korean Zombie, and then Corey Sandhagen comes with a friggin' flying knee. I don't think anyone expected that, right? I thought this was going to be kind of a hard-nosed fight. I did pick Frankie in this fight, so whatever. I'll take my shit. But I mean, Sandhagen cemented his shot at the title, right? We got Aljamain and Jan going at it. I guess the tricky thing is there any appeal in the UFC? Say Aljamain gets through Peter Yan. Is there any appeal to run back Sterling and Sandhagen? Because, I mean, Aljamain made it look easy. I mean, did it expose Corey's ground game that he doesn't have one? I mean, there was a quick takedown, a quick submission with just kind of zero defense there. Do you see the UFC doing something that's like, oh, okay, Dillashaw's back as of January, I forget what date that was. Are they like, okay, TJ's back. If Aljamain wins, he kind of already beat Sandhagen pretty easily. Do they just throw like TJ in the mix for the title, or do you think they give Sandhagen that next shot? I mean, it wasn't too long ago. You got to think, Sandhagen got submitted by Sterling last June. So, right, it hasn't even been a year yet. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on like what happens next potentially?
Yeah, I mean, I guess on paper, if you look at it, like TJ being a previous champion of the division, Sandhagen losing to Aljamain not that long ago, like it would make sense to put TJ, but I think having, the suspension on his name, like where he was on the EPO, he was cheating, he's taking performance enhancing drugs. I don't know. I think it would put a bad taste in everyone's mouth if they gave him a title shot coming off a 2-year suspension like that. Sandhagen's been active. He's been winning, and he's been getting highlight reel finishes since. So, and I don't think there's a another name in the division that you could put above him when it comes to, who deserves the title shot the most.
Yeah, no, you make a good point. But you know what? The UFC loves money. You said it last episode. So it's like, I don't know. Do they throw TJ back in there? That's like my biggest thing. I don't know. Or do you think, to a guy like Sandhagen, right? Does he take a fight with Dillashaw? Do you think he plays it safe and he realizes that he's the next in line? Or is he like, you know what, screw it, let me beat up TJ real quick? I mean, bantamweight's stacked. There's just a list of killers waiting to get that title. I mean, the top 5 is just ridiculous, right? Sterling, Sandhagen, Cody Garbrandt, Frankie Edgar, and then Rob Font, right? Rob Font's kind of the dark horse out of all this. Where does he come into play? And then you're adding TJ Dillashaw to the mix, who's an absolute savage, but he's coming off, like you said, a 2-year layoff, a suspension. So it's like, I'm curious to see what's going to happen. Because obviously with Jan and Aljamain fighting, there's going to be some clarity here. I'm excited. Like, this is going to kind of resurge this top 5 and really answer some questions. So, I mean, if I'm Sandhagen, I think I'm just playing it safe. I'm like, I'm next in line, because to me, obviously Sterling's a nightmare matchup for him. I think he does pretty good against Jan, because to me, I haven't seen that much of Jan to say this guy's going to hold the belt forever. I've seen him beat up an old Uriah Faber, and then I've seen him beat up Jose Aldo, which he had some trouble in that fight. In that second and third round, he ended up getting a resurgence, obviously, at the end, and finishing him. But I see Sandhagen as like that guy that can beat Jan, to be completely honest.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I think Sandhagen is a pretty bad matchup for anybody in that whole division. I think the thing that he would have most trouble with it is Aljamain with the wrestling.
Yeah.
But when it comes to striking, he's so creative and he's got so many different, tools to his arsenal. He's really unpredictable and he's tough to deal with. He's not, a traditional boxer or kickboxer or anything like that. He mixes it all so well. So I think all those guys have a tough time with him, and I think Aljamain is probably the worst matchup for him. But I think he gives Aljamain some trouble. That's still a fight he can win.
Yeah, because even in that fight, we didn't see too much. It just like immediately went to the ground and he got submitted, when it's like, I don't know what happened there. Even I was shocked at that result. I know how dangerous Aljamain is, and that's taking nothing away from him. I think Aljamain, I mean, personally, we're going to make, I'm going to make my picks in a few weeks, but I think Aljamain's going to get it done versus Jan. I think his just skill set overall is better. Jan has the better boxing, but I think Aljamain is just better everywhere, and especially if this goes to the ground. We've seen him on the ground, but I just haven't seen enough of Peter Yan's skills to be like, this guy's going to hold the belt forever. So, but obviously, shout out Corey Sandhagen. Just, I got SportsCenter top 10 knockout. Like you said, Kev, knockout of the year so far, and we've had some pretty goddamn good fights so far this year. So we'll see who can contend for that. And then looking at Frankie Edgar, man, obviously tough run, right? Dropping down to bantamweight, beating Pedro Munoz, who just beat Cody Garbrandt, right? So you're thinking like, you beat Munoz, closer to the title. He's in the top 5 in a new weight class. What do you do if you're Frankie Edgar here? You've had, in your career, right, recently, 3 bad knockouts, right? I know the Ortega one was a while back, but Korean Zombie, and then just getting Flatlined MMA, shout out, flatlined by Corey Sandhagen. I mean, where do you like? Does he make another run? Do you think he takes a step back? What is he doing now? I mean, he was in the top 5. So what happens next?
Yeah, I mean, he made a post right after the fight. He talked about how much it sucked, but he says he's going to come back. So I don't know. I mean, he looked good against Munoz. He could have had a pretty good fight against Sandhagen. I mean, it was just it's a crazy thing, that flying knee. I mean, it just came out of nowhere. Who knows how that fight would have went if they just went kind of, I don't know, if there wasn't like any, like, I don't know, crazy finishes like that. If it was just like skill for skill, like if Frankie was able to implement his wrestling, if they were able to go into, the third round, the later rounds, how that fight would have ended up, it could have been completely different,
It's true.
But so I still think he's definitely still top of the division. He could still definitely hang with all these guys in both the bantamweight and featherweight. But he has taken some pretty good knockouts. It's probably a good thing for him to take a little break and kind of see how these divisions shake out and just go for what's the best matchup for him at this point. Sandhagen's a nightmare matchup for anybody, especially for him being so short. I mean, when they did the face off, it looked like Sandhagen was like a foot taller than him. So I don't know. There's a lot of good fights, but you should definitely take a little bit of a break, I would say.
Yeah, and Frankie's so active. So, I mean, just to your point, like, yeah, take some time off. Let's reevaluate. And of course, he's still going to be in the top 10. Like you said, Corey Sandhagen is a high-level guy, potential future champ of this division. So, and obviously Frankie's a legend. Who doesn't love that guy? Humble in defeat, humble in loss, whatever it is. He's a savage. And I can't wait to see what happens with Sandhagen next, because I think this kid really has all the tools to be a champ that can defend the belt multiple times. He's got that it factor. He's long, lanky, like he's got power in his hands, power in his feet. We've seen it, right? In his legs. Like he's someone I think can be, like you said, a nightmare matchup for everyone in this top 10. Aljamain versus him. If Aljamain gets through Peter Yan, it's going to be a great rematch. I think he's going to make the adjustments, and we'll see what happens there. So shout out Corey Sandhagen. Unreal knockout. I don't know who's going to beat that this year, but then again, we had some crazy knockouts last year, so I'm excited to see who's going to contend there. And let's get to the main event, guys. Alistair Overeem taking on Alexander Volkov. Obviously, just two octagon legends, two monstrosities at heavyweight. Alistair Overeem wanted to make one more run for the title, man. On a little bit, you take a look at him. He's on a little bit of a streak, right? 2-fight win streak, beat Walteris, then beat up Augusto Sakai, right? Making another run. Heavyweight, I feel like, is in a weird spot right now because we had DC Stipe fight 3 times, right? We got Francis Ngannou who's still waiting for a shot. We got John Jones trying to jump up. So that's kind of blocking the division a little bit. So Alistair Overeem, who's been active throughout this whole quarantine period, right? He's making a name for himself again. He's making that resurgence. And he's taking on a guy, Alexander Volkov, who, that guy, 6'7", just a nightmare for everyone in this goddamn division. So long, so powerful, right? Lost to Curtis Blades, comes back big, beats up Walteris, and then, he's always been in big fights. The Derek Lewis fight, right? We all know what happened there. He's basically, if he just lasted 10 more seconds, that Derek Lewis fight, we were talking about him on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 fight win streak, right? He was probably going to get a title shot, but we all know what happened there. And then the decision loss to Curtis Blades. These are 2 top level heavyweights, and Volkov just getting it done by, via knockout, which I didn't see coming. Round 2, I think he's just so long, and he was just using his range so well. And I think Alistair just didn't realize how hard he hit, and he just stung him time and time again. And I think Overeem just didn't have an answer for it. So what'd you think about that fight? I was pretty impressed with Volkov and his movement, and obviously taking on a guy as big as Alistair is, and like how powerful he is. He was taking some shots, and Overeem just didn't have an answer for it. So what'd you think about that?
Yeah, I think Volkov looked great, especially with Overeem being, like a kickboxing world champion. He, in my eyes, he kind of dominated that fight. It didn't really look like Overeem was really able to get anything started or gain any momentum through that fight. It just looked like Volkov was just closing in as soon as the fight started. And I think Overeem ended up breaking his nose or something in the second round. And I think that, probably got into his head, affected his game a little bit, opened him up, and Volkov went in for the finish, and pretty impressive. It's a good win for him.
Yeah, and you look at Volkov, right? He was sitting at number 6. I'm assuming he's going to flip flop with Overeem, take number 5.
Mhm.
Where does he go for here? Because he's kind of in a tricky spot, because you take a look at the top 5. Let's say he moves into 5, right? Obviously got knocked out by Derek Lewis, and then he lost by decision to Curtis Blades. Rosenstrike's got a dance partner, and then you got Francis Ngannou, who's taking on Stipe. So he's kind of sitting, waiting. Who do you see him fighting next?
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, I'm sure he's going to want to be active, but none of the fights with anyone below him make sense for him to really take that risk. Maybe see what happens with because the Rosenstrike Gain fight, that's pretty soon, right?
Yeah. Yep, that's soon. So that could be
Maybe,
one.
yeah, maybe see where that ends up and take the winner of that. And I think both of those are decent matchups for him as well, with both of those guys being strikers. Yeah, I'd say probably that fight, or like, if he could get the Derek Lewis fight back or the Curtis Blades one, I say just go for it. I think all those fights make sense for him. Because Derek Lewis, he basically already beat. He'd get that one back. That'd be a pretty good one for him. And then to beat Blades, I mean, he's number 2. That'd be a huge win. So
Yeah.
anyone else?
Yeah, we'll see. He's in a good spot right now, because he can, although he wants to be active, I think he's in a spot where he's like, let me sit back. Like, we actually have a bunch of heavyweight fights coming up. Let me sit back, take some time to rest, and then let's pick and choose, because there's going to be a point where it's like, um, everyone in the top 5 is fighting. So it's like, let's sit back, see what the hell happens, and we'll pick the best opponent. So, overall, great main event. Like you said, I thought it was complete domination too. I mean, taking on a guy like Overeem with the skills that he has and the record that he had coming into the UFC in terms of like kickboxing and his experience there. I mean, he looked like a friggin'. It was dominant. So, and to see a guy like Overeem, I'm assuming he's not going to make his run anymore. He's had friggin' 70 plus fights in his career. We'll see what he does, reevaluates. I mean, knowing him, he's going to want to come back. I think he gets 500,000 a fight. So, I mean, if I was him, I'd come back and fight for the money. So, but overall, UFC Vegas 18, the first fight night in February, in the books. It was a good one. Overall, really great card. Dana White, thank you again for just putting on unreal shows. And then let's just get to the main event, UFC 258, this Saturday night, live, ESPN Plus. We got a title fight, ladies and gentlemen. We have Kamaru Usman taking on Gilbert Burns for the welterweight title. We have a fight between friends, between training partners. I am stoked about this one. Kamaru Usman, just this dominant force in the welterweight division. No one has been able to crack the code. He's his only loss in his career came back in 2013. He's just been on an absolute tear. 12-0 in the UFC, I believe. Has barely lost rounds. I think Colby Covington has, been his kind of toughest fight to this point. Really put on a masterclass performance against everyone he's fought in the UFC. And then he's facing a guy, Gilbert Burns, who came up from lightweight, right? He's on a 6-fight winning streak right now, taking out the likes of Gunnar Nelson, Damian Maia, dominating Tyron Woodley. How do you see this matchup? This is interesting. I got a lot of people saying Gilbert has the skill set to beat Usman, but I haven't seen anything that's going to show me that Usman has weaknesses. You know what I mean? Like, his cardio is ridiculous. His striking's getting better, right? Mm-hmm. We know he's got Khabib-like wrestling, Khabib-like pressure. How do you see this fight going down? And overall, like, who gets their hand raised, and who is it? And New or and Still? What are we talking here?
Yeah, like the typical Usman fight is he crushes his opponent up against the cage, takes him down, and then just either rides him or gets a little bit of ground and pound, and kind of repeats that through the rest of the fight and gets the decision victory. But I don't know if he's gonna want to wrestle with Burns, because Burns has some great jiu-jitsu, and I think Burns' wrestling is pretty good. Like, the way he was taking Woodley down, I don't know. I was pretty impressed by that. So I have a feeling that it might end up being a fight kind of like the Covington fight, where it's just coming down to the striking. Um, and to that, I think those guys are pretty even, So I don't know. It's a tough one to pick. I would probably say Usman though.
Usman, you think just via decision? Think just like a split? Or are we talking unanimous? What do you think
Yeah,
here?
because what the way his wrestling is, because like how we always talk about the jujitsu versus wrestling, like a good jujitsu
Yeah,
can
yeah.
mitigate someone's wrestling. The way he does it is he forces the person up against the cage and goes for the takedown off of that. So he never really ends up in anyone's guard or anything like that. So he doesn't really have to roll a whole lot. So I don't know. But I think it's gonna come down to striking. I don't think he's gonna really want to roll with Burns, and I don't think Burns is gonna be looking for a takedown either. I think it's gonna come down to the striking.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, overall, I think this is going to be a great fight. I look at someone like Usman where we haven't seen too many weaknesses, right? Even in that Colby fight, like, yeah, he was getting stung by Colby's jabs.
Yep.
Well, Colby to me is, obviously a top two welterweight in the world. I think Colby's really the only one that's going to give Kamaru trouble. I mean, we saw, in the Masvidal fight, although Masvidal took the fight on 6 days' notice, right? Usman, it was pretty light work, right? I think, Jorge had him in trouble in the first, I'd say, minute and a half when he was throwing that flurry. But other than that, I mean, Usman kind of dominated the rest of those 4 rounds. I look at a guy like Gilbert, right? Knocked out at lightweight, right? Found his groove up at welterweight, been knocking people out, dominating like that. Obviously, the victory over Tyron Woodley super impressive. A guy like Woodley, I know he's on the decline as well, but what he did to Damian Maya, like I know Damian Maya seems like the gatekeeper for everyone, right? For Usman, for Colby, for Woodley, everyone. I feel like everyone beats Damian Maya and they're like, oh, title shot instantly. But Gilbert Burns has looked impressive, man. And he's someone who I definitely think can give Usman problems depending where it goes. And for me, I think on the feet, Gilbert has the advantage. And that's where I'm curious to see, like you said, is Usman going to take him down? Because I don't know if that's going to be the game plan. And that's what worries me a little bit if it does stay on the feet. Gilbert's got the power in his hands. But again, man, Usman's just so strong. When he gets you up against the cage, you're not going anywhere. I still to this day, he exposed Woodley that night. That's still one of the best performances I've ever seen. Like what he did to Woodley when Woodley was on that tear, that was super impressive. But I am also going to say Kamaru via decision. I don't think he finishes Burns. I think Burns is friggin' tough. I know Burns got knocked out by Dan Hooker. That was at lightweight, though. He was draining himself. I think he really found his natural weight right here. I think it's going to be hard fought, though. I say unanimous, but I think it's going to be tougher than I originally thought. I don't think this is going to be Colby tough, where it's going to be like razor thin coming to the fifth, but I think this is going to be a great fight. I think the first 3 rounds are going to be super competitive, and I think Kamaru with his conditioning and his wrestling is really just going to put his foot on the gas come the 4th and 5th. That's I think, and still Kamaru Usman. So we're both in alignment there. He wins this. He's on his 3rd title defense, right? You got a guy in Woodley who had 4. They started talking about, is Woodley, the greatest welterweight of all time? Where, if he gets past Gilbert Burns, is it make the Colby fight again? Who else within that top 5 are you looking at being like, they can give Usman a run for their money? I know we got Chimaev and Leon Edwards fighting. Is that next in line? Does Colby get the rematch? Does Jorge get a rematch? What do you see? Let's just say Usman wins, beats Gilbert Burns via decision, whatever it is. What's next for him? Because he's starting to cement himself as pound for pound one of the best in the world, on his way to being one of the GOATs in the division. If he gets 3 title defenses, 1 more for Tyron Woodley, right? I don't know. What do you think happens next if he beats Burns?
Yeah, the fight I want to see is the Covington fight, but you know, there are guys that can make a case like Leon Edwards. He's on a winning streak right now, even though he hasn't fought in a while. He's still on a winning streak. I still like Wonder Boy Thompson.
Yep.
I think a lot of people forget about him, but he's number 5 right now. And then um, you got Kamzat. He's down at 15, but
Fighting Leon.
yeah, you don't know what could happen in a year and a half with him, with how active he is. So he could easily make his way up the rankings this year. And then another dangerous one is Vicente Luque. That's another person I think could make his way to the top of this division. But the fight that I really want to see, I want to see Covington and Usman again.
Do you think that Masvidal Covington will happen this year or no? Or do you think that's all just like smoke and mirrors kind of?
Yeah, I don't know. I think, yeah, I don't know. I guess it would probably just come down to money, because I feel like Covington's real goal is just getting to the belt, and then it's not a bad second option for him, but yeah, I think his primary goal would be getting that Usman fight back.
Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't want to see that? I think with that year we had so many good fights that one was kind of caught in the crosshairs. But that was definitely a fight of the year candidate. Two just overbearing wrestlers that had a boxing match. I don't think anyone thought that was going to happen. So I'd pay to see that one again. And I mean, I look right now, and we have Kamzat taking on Leon Edwards very soon. If Kamzat beats Leon Edwards, he's in the top 5. I think that sets himself up for a title shot. And I think if he beats Leon Edwards financially for the UFC, I think everyone's going to want to see if this guy is that legit, that in his, what would it be, his 5th UFC fight, he's fighting for the belt. Yeah. I mean,
possibility.
It's insane. Kamzat could be fighting literally in the summertime for the belt if he gets past Leon. Obviously, tall order. The caliber of fighters that Kamzat has faced versus the caliber of fighters that like Leon Edwards faced, and Kamaru Usman is definitely on a different level. But if this guy pulls it off, he could be fighting Usman by the summertime if Usman gets past Burns. Now, flip-flop it. Burns wins. Who do you want to see next? Is that still Covington? Does he get redemption, or do you think they run it back?
I don't think it's Covington, just because he's coming off a loss. I think it's going to be, maybe they make, depending on how the fight is, they make a Usman rematch if it was a really exciting fight.
Yep.
But other than that, I would probably say winner of Edwards Chimaev.
Crazy.
I mean, that's the only thing I could think of. I mean, Masvidal's coming off a loss. Thompson really hasn't been in the discussion, but he's always right there. And then like Chiesa, Maya, Luque. Yeah, I think Edwards would be next in line, but he has to beat Chimaev, and if Chimaev beats him, he could definitely take that spot.
Yeah, it's super exciting. I like a guy like Chiesa, who kind of surged in the past couple of years. He's someone to watch out for. I think him versus Wonderboy would be a good fight. I know Wonderboy's making a run for that belt. I can definitely see him getting another shot. With this division being so exciting and finally picking up again, and having a dominant champion. Bold prediction: who is the welterweight champion by the end of 2021? If you were to say right now, make a bet on it right now, who is the welterweight champion at the end of the year? Is it Ann Still? Is Kamaru keeping that belt, or are we going to see a new face holding that belt?
Yeah, I mean, I think Usman beats Burns, and then he probably has. What do you think? He fights one more time this year?
I'd say one more. Yeah.
So, he's either got Covington, Edwards. I don't know.
Chimaev or Wonder Boy.
Yeah, I mean, if he fights Covington, that's a 50-50. That's a tough fight for him. I think he gets it done with Edwards, just with the wrestling, if he can avoid staying there striking with him.
He beat him once.
Yeah, it's a tough call. I mean, the fight would have to be made, the Covington versus Usman.
Yeah.
And I would say Covington would probably get that one back. I think he. I don't know. I mean, that fight was so close, and Covington was. I don't know. If he didn't have the broken jaw, do you think that would have been a different fight?
I mean, it's a possibility. I mean, we rewatched that the other night. It was so razor close, and there was never a point like I think you could have made the case. I think you could have made the case that Colby was up. You could have, but you also could have made the case that it was tied, and then you could have made the case that Kamaru was up. Like it was so back and forth the scorecards, and then like obviously, I mean, even if the finish didn't happen, would you have considered that fifth round? Like let's say he didn't get finished, he got up after that, 2 knockdowns. Is that a 10-8? And do you think that would have been a draw? Or no, would it have like say it when it like could there have been a potential for that to be a draw? Or is that a 10-8 round? Like that's the thing. Like if he didn't get finished.
Yeah, if that's a 10-8 round, I mean that would have been a 10-8 round.
Yeah.
Yeah, Usman probably gets the win. I don't think what's his name? Covington was going in 3-1. Like those 4 rounds before were, like you said, razor thin. They could have went either way. I don't know how the judges would have lined up on that. But yeah, I mean, so Usman wins, beats Burns, faces Covington after. I think Covington beats him, and then they have a trilogy fight.
That would be so sick. That would be so sick. I agree with you.
Do that on the same night as Poirier McGregor 3.
Man, that'd be unreal. That'd be unreal. That'd be a sick card. There's so many good friggin' matchups. I think that'd be great. I think that is the fight you have to make, depending on what happens with Chimaev. I just think like the story for Chimaev is just way too good to not have that fight. But obviously Covington, I have no idea what his gimmick's going to be anymore because like Trump's not in office. So like I wonder how he's going to like play into his trash talk and his persona, all that stuff. But that's the fight to make. I didn't think of having a possible trilogy, but that is badass. So I'm going to agree with you on that one because those two guys are like the same fighter. I think Usman's, just a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger. But I mean, Colby's pace, Colby's cardio has been great. They're both like the same friggin' fighter. So I'm curious to see what happens there. And then I guess just to go off your point, McGregor Poirier, Ariel Helwani stated today the UFC is in talks right now they want to push Poirier McGregor 3 come May because that's when Conor wants to come back. Do you agree with it? Does it make sense? And who wins that one? I mean, McGregor made a post today saying no more Mr. Nice Guy. Does that mean he's going back to his trash talking ways? Is he going to start bashing Dustin? Like what? I'm just so confused with this whole thing now because it's just lightweight is so stacked. I feel like they just can't do that to the division.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably the best fight for Conor right now because, if he ends up losing again, it's to Dustin Poirier, who's, top of the division. If he loses to anybody else, if he goes into his Nate Diaz fight, or if he goes into, anyone else in the 155, his record would turn to, what is he, like 1-3 in his past 4 fights or something like that?
Yeah, crazy, right?
So like I think I think losing to Dustin isn't going to be as big of a hit to his, not reputation, but standing in the division as it would if he lost to like Mike Chandler or any of those other guys, and Nate Diaz if he comes down to 155. So I think it's a good fight for him. But May, after a knockout loss, I mean, this is kind of what we've seen with Dillashaw and Garbrandt. They ran that back. They ran that back pretty quick, and it was the same result.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I mean, they both got one. They're 1-1 right now, both with knockouts over each other. I didn't think McGregor was totally outclassed in that fight. I thought it was pretty even. The calf kicks were kind of the difference in the fight, but when it came to the boxing and everything else, I thought it was pretty even. Dustin had the takedown, which is pretty good. McGregor had better clinch work, but it was a competitive fight overall. So it wasn't like McGregor was out of that fight in the least. It just the accumulation of those calf kicks and just a good game plan on Poirier's end.
Yeah, I think when you're dealing with McGregor, it's just all about money. Like Dana White's looking at his cash cow, being like, we can do, we have the Poirier trilogy, and then you know what? When if Conor wins the belt, we'll just throw friggin' Nate in there for the trilogy with Nate for the belt. Like they see dollar signs when they see Conor. They just had the second largest pay-per-view in the history of MMA. I mean, and that's Conor losing. Think about his comeback again. We talk about like every fight is Conor's comeback because he doesn't fight so well, but coming back from a loss, that's what's going to generate the most money. People want to see McGregor loses one more time. I mean, he's basically, obviously not out of it, but you got to kind of reevaluate at that point, losing twice back to back, to a guy like Poirier, who's the top of the division. If he can't beat him, he's never going to get that belt back. So,
yeah, I mean, it would kind of become the thing where people would still love to watch him fight. They'd pay for his main events, but no one's going to want to watch him fight for a title.
exactly.
I mean, people will, but it's not going to make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with the way that division is, like it's just all killers at the top of that division. There's a lot of good fights that could be made out of those guys. But yeah, I think he does come back with the trash talk. I think he's going to come back with the mind games because that's something he's got.
Like he was just so cordial to Dustin. Say they run it back. Like, what can he say to Dustin? I just don't even get it. Like if he was fighting someone else, like so let's say he came back and fought Diaz, that makes sense because like they have history. But he was like, promoting the hot sauce and like, being nice to his wife. Like, I just feel like you can't come back from that, or everyone's going to be like, oh, this is an act. You know what I mean? Like, do you think he can really? I mean, I know he's the king of mind games, but do you think like even after getting knocked out like that, like he can come back and even have a trash talk game?
I don't know. Maybe it's just not so much trash talk, but the mind games. But I think that's something that he's gotten away from. That kind of got him to where he was.
Yeah.
But then there was also things in the fight, with his stance and kind of his fighting style that he abandoned that worked for him before and got him the 2 belts. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of changes he can make. But yeah, that'd be a fun one. But running it back this soon, I don't know.
We'll see, man. The UFC loves money. There's just so many goddamn good fights coming up. But just to go back to the pay-per-view this weekend, guys, UFC. Oh, I don't even remember what I don't even remember what pay-per-view is it? UFC 258, Usman versus Burns this Saturday night, live on pay-per-view. Go buy that shit. It's gonna be a great fight. Comment below if you think it's gonna be Ann Still and new. I'm curious to see. I know Usman's got kind of this rejuvenated fan base, but I know a lot of people love Gilbert Burns, so I'm curious to see who you got here. You got the Nigerian Nightmare or Gilbert Burns? Comment below. Guys, thank you so much for the support. We're blowing the fuck up. Go like our photos on Instagram. We're getting a massive following Instagram. Go to our website, www.FlatlinedMMA.com. We want to up our subscribers, guys. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers in the next few months. Help us out. Go share our stuff. Go like. Go turn your notifications on. Do whatever you got to do to be up to date with all the best Flatline news. Go buy some merch. Go to our website. Show us some love. And until next time, Flatline MMA. Peace.